Billionaire ran through the park full of anger until he saw his ex walking with twin babies. Before we begin, drop a comment telling us which city you're watching from. And once the story ends, don't forget to rate it from 0 to 10. Oh, and make sure to follow our channel for more stories like this. Now, sit back and enjoy every detail. Chapter 1. The morning air cut through Nathan Graves' lungs like shards of glass as his feet pounded against the asphalt path. Sweat dripped from his temples despite the cool October breeze, his designer running gear clinging to his muscular frame. At 37, he still maintained the physique of a college athlete, though the stress lines around his piercing blue eyes told a different story. His phone buzzed incessantly in his armband, but Nathan ignored it. The board meeting from hell was finally over, but Morrison's words still echoed in his head. Your personal life is affecting your judgment, Nathan. The shareholders are concerned. Personal life? What personal life? Ever since Isabella had thrown her engagement ring at him 3 months ago, screaming about his emotional unavailability, Nathan's existence had become a monotonous cycle of 18-hour workdays and sleepless nights. He pushed harder, his legs burning as he navigated the winding path through Central Park. This was his sanctuary, the only place where the weight of running a $15 billion tech empire couldn't crush him. Here, he wasn't Nathan Graves, CEO of Graves Industries. He was just another runner trying to outpace his demons. The path curved around a small lake, and Nathan slowed his pace slightly, his breathing heavy but controlled. He'd been running competitively since prep school, and even now, fury was an excellent motivator. Isabella had accused him of being incapable of love, of caring more about his stock portfolio than human connection. Maybe she was right. Maybe that's all he'd ever be. Nathan's feet stopped moving. Across the path, maybe 30 yards away, a woman pushed a double stroller with practiced ease. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a messy bun, a few strands catching the morning sunlight. She wore a simple cream-colored sundress that fluttered around her knees, and even from this distance Nathan could see the exhaustion in her posture, but it was her profile that made his world tilt on its axis. Delaney Ross. His heart hammered against his ribs, and for a moment, Nathan forgot how to breathe. 2 years and 3 months. That's how long it had been since he'd last seen her face, since she'd walked out of his penthouse with tears streaming down her cheeks and her bags in hand. 2 years and 3 months since he'd made the biggest mistake of his life. She looked different, thinner, more tired, but there was something else, a maternal grace he'd never seen before. As she leaned down to adjust something in the stroller, Nathan caught a glimpse of 2 small faces, babies, twins, from the look of it, maybe 18 months old. His first instinct was relief mixed with something that felt suspiciously like disappointment. She'd moved on, found someone else, started the family she'd always dreamed about, the one he'd been too scared to give her. Of course she was working as a nanny now. Delaney had always been incredible with children. She'd probably never finished her degree after everything that happened between them. Nathan took a step forward, then stopped. What would he say? Hey Delaney, remember me? The guy who chose his mother's approval over the woman he loved? The guy who'd stood there like a coward while his mother called her a gold-digging nobody right to her face? Delaney straightened up, and for one terrifying moment, Nathan thought she might look his way. Instead, she reached into the stroller and lifted out a little boy with dark hair that caught the sunlight. The child wrapped his tiny arms around her neck, and she held him close, swaying gently as she murmured something Nathan couldn't hear. Then she lifted out a little girl, balancing both children with the expertise of someone who'd been doing this for a while. The girl had the same dark hair, the same olive-toned skin as her brother. They were beautiful children, and Delaney looked at them with such pure, fierce love that Nathan felt something crack inside his chest. This was what happiness looked like, what he'd given up, what he'd thrown away because he was too much of a coward to stand up to his family, too proud to fight for what mattered. Delaney settled both children back into the stroller and began walking again, moving away from him down the path. Nathan watched until she disappeared around a bend, her cream dress the last thing to vanish from sight. He stood there for a long time, his legs suddenly feeling like lead. The anger that had driven him to the park was gone, replaced by something far worse. Regret so sharp it felt like a physical wound. Somewhere in the back of his mind, he wondered about the children's father. Was Delaney happy? Was she in love? Did she ever think about what they'd had together, or had she buried those memories as deeply as he'd tried to? Nathan's phone buzzed again, probably his assistant wondering where he was for his 11 o'clock. He should go. He should run back to his car. drive to his office, and pretend this encounter had never happened. That's what the old Nathan would do. But as he stood there in the morning light, watching the spot where she'd disappeared, Nathan Graves realized that some mistakes were too big to run away from. What he didn't know was that in just a few days his phone would ring with a number he'd never forgotten, and a voice he'd never stopped loving would deliver news that would change everything he thought he knew about the last 2 years of his life. Nathan's corner office on the 42nd floor of the Graves Industries Tower offered a panoramic view of Manhattan, but for the past 3 days, he'd barely looked up from his computer screen. The quarterly reports blurred together as his mind wandered back to auburn hair and cream-colored dresses, to the way Delaney had held those children like they were her entire world. "Sir?" Nathan's assistant, Chloe, stood in the doorway holding a steaming cup of coffee. She was young, efficient, and had the good sense never to ask personal questions. "Your mother called. She wants to confirm dinner tonight." Nathan's jaw tightened. "Cancel it." "Sir, it's the 3rd time this month you've—" "Cancel it, Chloe." Nathan's voice carried the edge that made board members squirm. "And hold my calls for the next hour." Alone again, Nathan leaned back in his leather chair and closed his eyes. Dinner with his mother meant listening to her latest matchmaking schemes, her pointed comments about suitable women from appropriate families. It meant pretending he cared about her charity galas and social climbing. It meant being reminded once again of how spectacularly he'd failed at the one relationship that had ever mattered. He'd met Delaney during his 2nd degree at Columbia, an MBA he'd pursued against his father's wishes. Nathan had been 28 then, already groomed to take over the family empire, but desperate for something real, something that wasn't handed to him on a silver platter. She'd been working her way through college, studying elementary education while waitressing at a small cafe near campus. The first time he saw her, she was arguing with a rude customer who'd made his toddler cry. Delaney had knelt down to the child's level, made him laugh, then turned to the father with fire in her green eyes. "Children learn how to treat people by watching adults," she'd said quietly. "Maybe think about what lesson you're teaching." Nathan had ordered coffee he didn't want just to talk to her. Their first date had been a disaster. He'd taken her to Le Bernardin, and she'd been so uncomfortable in the Michelin-starred restaurant that she barely spoke. But their second date, a picnic in Riverside Park with sandwiches from a bodega, had lasted until sunrise. She'd told him about growing up in foster care, about her dream of becoming a teacher, about wanting to give children the stability she'd never had. He'd fallen in love with her fierce independence, her genuine laugh, the way she saw potential in everyone around her. For 18 months, Delaney had been his refuge from the suffocating expectations of his family name. With her, he wasn't the heir to a fortune. He was just Nathan, the man who made terrible jokes and burned everything he tried to cook. The relationship had crumbled the moment his mother got involved. Eleanor Graves had taken one look at Delaney's thrift store dresses and working-class background and declared war. The criticisms had been subtle at first, backhanded compliments about Delaney's quaint apartment, suggestions that she might be more comfortable at family gatherings if she dressed differently, but they'd escalated when Nathan had started talking about proposing. "She's using you," his mother had said over lunch at the country club. "Girls like her see dollar signs, Nathan. She'll trap you with a pregnancy. Mark my words." Nathan had defended Delaney, but the poison had already been planted. When his father had died unexpectedly, leaving Nathan to shoulder the full weight of the company at 32, the pressure had intensified. Board meetings, merger negotiations, hostile takeovers, all while his mother whispered doubts about Delaney's motives. The final blow had come during Thanksgiving dinner. Nathan had been planning to propose that weekend. The ring was already in his jacket pocket, but when Delaney had tried to help serve dinner, his mother had stopped her cold. "Oh dear, this is family time. Perhaps you could wait in the other room." The humiliation in Delaney's eyes had been devastating. Nathan should have stood up for her, should have told his mother exactly what he thought of her prejudice. Instead, he'd frozen, paralyzed by the weight of family loyalty and his own cowardice. That night, Delaney had asked him point blank, "Do you love me, Nathan? Because if you do, I need you to choose. I can't keep being treated like I'm not good enough for your world." He'd chosen wrong. Nathan's phone buzzed, snapping him back to the present. A text from his personal trainer. "You missed our session yesterday. Everything okay?" Everything was far from okay. Nathan stared out at the Manhattan skyline, his reflection ghost-like in the glass. Somewhere out there, Delaney was living a life that should have included him. She was raising children who should have been theirs. building the family they'd dreamed about during those late-night conversations in her tiny apartment. He pulled up his laptop and before he could stop himself, typed her name into the search bar. No social media profiles. Delaney had always been private. No news articles or professional listings. It was as if she'd vanished completely after leaving his life. Nathan closed the laptop with more force than necessary. He was being ridiculous. She'd moved on, clearly found someone who deserved her, someone who wasn't too weak to choose love over legacy. But as the afternoon sun slanted through his office windows, Nathan couldn't shake the image of those two children with their dark hair and olive skin. Something about them had seemed familiar, though he couldn't place what. Maybe it was just wishful thinking. Maybe he was seeing connections that didn't exist because he wanted so desperately to believe that somewhere, in some parallel universe, he hadn't made the worst mistake of his life. His phone rang, jolting him from his thoughts. Unknown number. Nathan almost didn't answer. Chloe screened his calls religiously, but something made him pick up on the fourth ring. Nathan Graves. Silence. Then, so quietly he almost missed it. Nathan? The voice hit him like a physical blow. Shaky, desperate but unmistakably hers. Delaney? Nathan's hand gripped the phone so tightly his knuckles went white. The silence stretched between them like a chasm filled with 2 years of unspoken words. Delaney's voice cracked. I need to tell you something. Can you meet me? Please? Nathan was already reaching for his jacket. Where are you? St. Mary's Hospital. Pediatric wing. Her words came out in a rush. 4th floor. I'll be in the waiting area. The line went dead before Nathan could ask why she was at a hospital, before he could process the terror he'd heard in her voice. He was moving before conscious thought kicked in, grabbing his keys and heading for the elevator. The drive to St. Mary's passed in a blur of traffic lights and honking horns. Nathan's mind raced with possibilities, each one worse than the last. Was she sick? Had something happened to those children? The ones he'd assumed belonged to someone else? The pediatric wing was a maze of colorful murals and child-sized furniture that felt surreal against the antiseptic hospital smell. Nathan found the waiting area and stopped dead in his tracks. Delaney sat hunched in a plastic chair, still wearing the cream dress from the park but now wrinkled and stained. Her auburn hair hung loose around her face like a curtain, and when she looked up at his approach, Nathan saw dark circles under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and worry. But it was the little girl sleeping in her lap that made Nathan's breath catch. Dark hair, olive skin, maybe 18 months old. The same child he'd seen her holding in the park. Thank you for coming, Delaney whispered, careful not to wake the sleeping toddler. I didn't know who else to call. Nathan lowered himself into the chair beside her, his expensive suit incongruous among the scattered toys and children's books. What happened? Are you okay? Delaney's laugh was hollow. Am I okay? She looked down at the child in her arms, brushing a strand of dark hair from the little girl's forehead. Her brother, her voice broke. He collapsed this morning. Fever, difficulty breathing. They're running tests. Where's... Nathan hesitated. Where's their father? Delaney's green eyes met his and Nathan saw a universe of pain reflected there. That's what I need to tell you. She took a shaky breath. There is no father. Not in the way you mean. Nathan's world tilted. Delaney, her name is Isabella Grace, she said quietly, looking down at the sleeping child. And her brother, the one they're treating, is Nathan James. Her eyes found his again. They're yours, Nathan. They're ours. The words hit Nathan like a physical blow. He stared at the little girl in Delaney's arms. Isabella, named after his grandmother. Her small face was peaceful in sleep, but now that he knew what to look for, he could see it. The shape of her nose, the way her eyebrows curved, features he recognized from his own baby pictures. That's... Nathan's voice came out as a whisper. That's impossible. I found out 2 weeks after I left. Delaney's words were barely audible. I was sick, exhausted. I thought it was stress from the breakup. When the doctor told me I was pregnant with twins, I sat in my car in the parking lot and cried for 3 hours. Nathan's hands were shaking. Why didn't you tell me? Delaney's laugh was bitter. Tell you what? That the gold-digging nobody your mother warned you about was trying to trap you with a pregnancy? Exactly like she predicted? You know I never believed that. Do I? Delaney shifted Isabella to her other arm. Because when push came to shove, Nathan, you chose her opinion over our relationship. You stood there and let her humiliate me, and then you let me walk away. Nathan felt like he was drowning. I was going to propose. That weekend I had the ring. And yet you didn't fight for us when it mattered. Delaney's voice was steady now, but tears streamed down her cheeks. I was 29 years old, Nathan. Pregnant and alone, facing the reality of raising twins by myself. I couldn't handle the thought of your mother trying to take them from me, or worse, of you deciding they were just another burden from your past. They're my children. The words felt foreign on Nathan's tongue. Children, plural. A son and daughter he'd never known existed. Yes, Delaney said simply. They are. Nathan stared at Isabella's sleeping face, memorizing every detail. How did you manage? Money? Medical care? Everything? I figured it out. Delaney's voice carried a strength Nathan remembered from their college days. I moved to Brooklyn, found a small apartment, sold baked goods at farmers markets until I was too pregnant to stand for long hours. A friend from my education program helped me get enrolled in a program for pregnant women without insurance. After they were born, I got a job at Little Steps Daycare Center. They let me bring the twins with me. Nathan's chest ached at the picture she painted. While he'd been living in his penthouse, drowning his sorrows in work and meaningless relationships, the woman he'd loved had been struggling to survive with his children. I never wanted your money, Delaney continued. I wanted them to know their father loved them. But I was terrified that if I reached out, you'd think I was after something, or that your mother would find a way to. My mother. Nathan's voice turned hard. Does she know? No one knows except my friend Jenna and now you. Delaney looked toward the hallway where doctors in scrubs moved purposefully between rooms. But when Nathan James collapsed this morning, when they told me he might need surgery, she wiped her eyes. I realized that my pride wasn't worth risking his life. If something happened to him and you never knew he existed, I'd never forgive myself. Nathan stood abruptly, pacing to the window that overlooked the hospital's courtyard. Children. He had children. A son named after him who was somewhere in this hospital, sick and scared. A daughter sleeping peacefully in her mother's arms, unaware that her world was about to change forever. I want to see him, Nathan said, turning back to Delaney. My son. I want to see Nathan James. Delaney nodded, her expression unreadable. The doctor should be back soon with test results, but Nathan. She stood carefully, still holding Isabella. I need you to understand something. I'm not asking you to suddenly become a family. I'm not asking for anything except that you know they exist. These are your children, but they're also mine. I've raised them alone for almost 2 years, and I won't let anyone, not even you, disrupt their stability. Nathan met her fierce gaze and saw the protective mother she'd become. The same woman who'd once defended a stranger's child in a coffee shop was now defending their children from him. I understand, he said quietly. But Delaney, I'm not going anywhere, not this time. Before she could respond, a doctor in pediatric scrubs approached them, clipboard in hand. Ms. Ross, I have news about Nathan James. Dr. Patricia Henley was a small woman with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She looked between Nathan and Delaney with the practiced assessment of someone who'd delivered difficult news to countless families. Nathan James has pneumonia, she said gently. It's bacterial, which means it's treatable with antibiotics, but given his age, we want to monitor him closely for the next 24 hours. Delaney's knees nearly buckled with relief. Nathan instinctively reached out to steady her, his hand finding the small of her back. The contact sent electricity through both of them, familiar and foreign at the same time. Can we see him? Delaney asked, Isabella stirring slightly in her arms. Of course, he's stable and awake. Fair warning, he's got an IV and a few monitors, so it might look more serious than it is. Dr. Henley's gaze shifted to Nathan. And you are? Nathan opened his mouth, but the words stuck. What was he? The biological father who'd just learned of his children's existence? A stranger who'd abandoned their mother? He's Nathan's father, Delaney said quietly. He's Nathan's father. Dr. Henley nodded without judgment. Room 412. The nurses will get you set up with visitor badges. As they walked down the hallway, Isabella woke up and immediately began fussing. She looked around with wide, dark eyes, Nathan's eyes, and when her gaze landed on him, she stared with the unblinking curiosity of a toddler. Hi, sweetheart, Delaney murmured, bouncing her gently. It's okay. We're going to see your brother. Isabella reached out a small hand toward Nathan, and without thinking, he offered his finger. Her tiny fingers wrapped around it with surprising strength, and Nathan felt something fundamental shift inside his chest. She's beautiful, he whispered. She looks just like you did as a baby, Delaney said, then caught herself. I mean, I imagine she does. I've seen your baby pictures in those business magazines. Nathan wanted to tell her that his mother had shown him those same pictures, that she'd kept photo albums of his childhood that Delaney had never been allowed to see. Instead, he watched Isabella examine his finger with scientific toddler concentration. Room 412 was painted in cheerful pastels, with cartoon animals dancing across the walls. But all Nathan could see was the small figure in the hospital bed, dwarfed by machines and wires. Nathan James looked exactly like Nathan had at 18 months old. The same dark hair, the same stubborn chin, even the same way of sleeping with one arm flung above his head. But his small chest rose and fell with effort, and an IV line snaked from his tiny hand to a bag of clear fluid. "Oh, baby," Delaney whispered, rushing to the bedside. "Mama's here." Nathan James opened his eyes, impossibly blue, just like Nathan's, and smiled despite his obvious discomfort. "Mama," he said in a voice hoarse from crying. "Yes, baby. Mama's here." Delaney set Isabella on the chair and leaned over the bed rails. "And look, Isabella came to see you too." Isabella immediately began chattering in the incomprehensible language of toddlers, reaching toward her brother. Nathan watched this scene. His family, he realized with a jolt, and felt like an intruder witnessing something sacred. "And this is..." Delaney hesitated, looking at Nathan. "This is Nathan, your daddy." Nathan James studied him with serious eyes, taking in the expensive suit and unfamiliar face. After a long moment, he held out his arms. Nathan had never held a child before, had never wanted to, if he was honest. Children had always seemed fragile and complicated, requiring skills he didn't possess. But as he carefully lifted his 18-month-old son from the hospital bed, supporting his small head the way he'd seen Delaney do with Isabella, Nathan felt something click into place. "Hi, buddy," Nathan said softly. "I'm sorry you don't feel good." Nathan James laid his head against Nathan's shoulder, his small body radiating heat from the fever. "Daddy," he said, testing the word. Nathan closed his eyes, overwhelmed by the weight of this tiny person who carried his name, his blood, his future. "Yeah," he whispered. "I'm your daddy." A nurse came in to check Nathan James's vitals, and Nathan reluctantly handed him back to Delaney. But Isabella had climbed onto the chair and was now demanding attention, her arms raised in the universal toddler signal for pick-me-up. Nathan looked at Delaney, who nodded. "She won't bite," she said with the first hint of humor he'd heard from her all day. Isabella was lighter than her brother, all energy and motion even as Nathan held her. She patted his face with both hands, then pointed to his tie and said something that sounded like pity. "Pretty," Delaney translated. "She likes shiny things. Here." Nathan loosened his tie and let Isabella examine the silk. She was fascinated by the smooth texture, running her fingers over it while babbling contentedly. "She's going to drool on your Hermes tie," Delaney warned. "I don't care," Nathan said, and realized he meant it. Isabella could destroy his entire wardrobe if it made her happy. They spent the next hour in the hospital room, taking turns holding the children while Nathan James dozed fitfully. Nathan learned that Isabella's favorite food was strawberries, that Nathan James could already say a dozen words, and that both children had inherited their mother's stubborn streak. "They usually nap at 2, Delaney said, glancing at her phone. "But with all the excitement, I could get them something to eat," Nathan offered. "The cafeteria, or I could have something delivered." "The cafeteria is fine." Delaney's voice was carefully neutral. "Isabella likes grilled cheese. Nathan James usually just picks at whatever I'm eating." Nathan stood, then hesitated. Will you be here when I get back?" Something flickered across Delaney's face. "I'm not going anywhere, Nathan. This is where I belong." Nathan nodded, but as he headed for the elevator, he couldn't shake the feeling that everything was balanced on a knife's edge. He'd found his children, but he still had no idea how to be their father. He'd found Delaney again, but the woman who'd once loved him now looked at him like a stranger, and somewhere in the back of his mind, Nathan knew that when his mother learned about the twins' existence, the real battle would begin. But for now, he was going to buy grilled cheese for his daughter and find a way to make his son smile. For now, that was enough. Nathan returned to room 412 with a bag full of food and a racing heart. He'd spent 20 minutes in the hospital cafeteria, not choosing lunch but calling his lawyer. "I need you to set up a trust fund," he'd said into the phone, his voice low. "2 of them, actually. And I need you to research family court law in New York." Now, watching Delaney feed small pieces of grilled cheese to Isabella while Nathan James slept peacefully, Nathan felt the magnitude of his new reality settling over him like a heavy coat. His fever's down, Delaney said without looking up. Dr. Henley thinks we can go home tomorrow if he keeps improving. Home. Nathan wondered what that meant for Delaney. Where are you living now? Brooklyn, Sunset Park. Delaney wiped Isabella's face with a napkin. It's a small place, but it's ours. Nathan pulled up the neighborhood on his phone while Delaney wasn't looking. The crime statistics made his stomach clench. Is it safe? Delaney's laugh was sharp. Define safe. We've never been robbed, if that's what you're asking. The building has good locks, and Mrs. Chen next door watches the kids sometimes when I have to work late. You work late? Nathan tried to keep his voice neutral. What about childcare? I manage. Delaney's tone carried a warning. We've been fine on our own, Nathan. But they shouldn't have to be, Nathan thought. His children, were living in a dangerous neighborhood while he had more money than he could spend in 3 lifetimes. The injustice of it made him feel sick. His phone buzzed. A text from his mother. Dinner tonight, 7 p.m., don't cancel again. Nathan stared at the message, imagining Eleanor Graves' reaction to learning she had grandchildren. Grandchildren she'd never wanted, born to the woman she'd driven away. I have to tell my mother, Nathan said suddenly. Delaney's head snapped up. What? She's going to find out eventually. Better if it comes from me. No. Delaney's voice was flat. Absolutely not. Delaney, these are her grandchildren. These are my children. Delaney stood up so quickly that Isabella startled. Your mother made it very clear what she thought of me. I won't have her treating Nathan James and Isabella the way she treated me. Nathan set down his coffee and moved closer. She was wrong about you. Completely wrong. And these children, they're Graves' family. They have rights. Rights? Delaney's eyes flashed. What rights? The right to be told they're not good enough? The right to grow up knowing their grandmother thinks their mother is trash? It won't be like that, won't it? Delaney lowered her voice as Nathan James stirred. Tell me honestly, Nathan, when your mother finds out that the gold-digging nobody she ran off actually was pregnant, what do you think her reaction will be? Nathan couldn't answer because he knew exactly what Eleanor's reaction would be. Fury, followed by a determination to control the situation. His mother had spent decades molding him into the perfect heir. She wouldn't hesitate to do the same with his children. She'll want to meet them, Nathan said finally. And then what? Weekend visits to the penthouse? Private schools and trust funds? Nannies and boarding schools so they can be raised properly? Delaney shook her head. I've seen how your family operates, Nathan. Everything is about image and control. I won't let that happen to my babies. Our babies, Nathan corrected quietly. The words hung between them like a challenge. Delaney stared at him for a long moment, and Nathan saw the fear beneath her anger. She was terrified, not of poverty or struggle, but of losing her children to his world. I want to be their father, Nathan said. Really be their father. Not just write checks from a distance. But I don't want to turn their lives upside down either. Then what are you suggesting? Nathan had been thinking about this since the cafeteria. What if we took it slow? I could visit regularly, spend time with them, help with expenses, but quietly. And as for my mother, he ran a hand through his hair. Maybe she doesn't need to know. Not yet. Delaney sat back down, pulling Isabella onto her lap. You'd lie to your mother? I'd protect my family, Nathan said, and the conviction in his own voice surprised him. A comfortable silence fell over the room. Nathan James woke up asking for water, and Nathan helped him drink from a sippy cup while Delaney changed Isabella's diaper. They moved around each other with careful politeness, like dancers learning new choreography. There's something else, Delaney said as she settled Isabella for a nap in the fold-out chair. My hours at Little Steps Daycare are being cut. I've been looking for something else, but with 18-month-old twins. Nathan's hands clenched into fists. You shouldn't have to worry about that. Everyone worries about money, Nathan. Even people with trust funds eventually learn that lesson. The barb hit home, but Nathan pushed past it. Let me help. Not as charity, but as child support. It's my responsibility. I don't want your money. It's not about what you want. It's about what Nathan James and Isabella need. Nathan moved closer, lowering his voice. They're wearing clothes from discount stores, Delaney. Isabella's shoes are held together with tape. Delaney's cheeks flushed. Those shoes are perfectly fine. I'm not criticizing you. I'm saying you shouldn't have to choose between buying your daughter new shoes and paying rent. Nathan pulled out his phone. I'm going to transfer money to your account. I don't have an account connected to anything you'd have access to. Then I'll open one for you. Or give you cash, or... Stop. Delaney held up a hand. Just stop. I know you want to help, but this isn't something you can fix by throwing money at it. Then what can I do? Delaney looked at him for a long moment, and Nathan saw the exhaustion that went bone deep. The weight of raising 2 toddlers alone, of working multiple jobs, of being strong when she wanted to fall apart. Be their father, she said simply. Show up. Be consistent. Don't promise them things you can't deliver, and don't disappear when it gets complicated. I won't disappear. You did before. The words were quiet, but they hit Nathan like a physical blow. That was different. Was it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you only came back because I forced your hand. If Nathan James hadn't gotten sick, would you have ever tried to find me? Nathan wanted to lie, to say he'd been looking for her all along, but Delaney deserved better than that. I don't know, he admitted. I thought you'd moved on, found someone better. There is no one better or worse, Nathan. There's just people who stay and people who leave. Delaney stroked Isabella's hair as the little girl drifted off to sleep. I need to know which one you are before I let you into their lives completely. Nathan looked at his sleeping children, his son recovering from pneumonia, his daughter clutching a worn stuffed rabbit. They were beautiful and perfect, and he'd missed the first 18 months of their lives because he'd been too much of a coward to fight for their mother. I'm staying, he said. Whatever it takes, however long it takes to prove it to you. I'm staying. Delaney nodded, but Nathan could see the doubt in her eyes. And as the afternoon sun slanted through the hospital windows, he realized that earning his children's love might be easier than earning their mother's trust. But he was going to try. Starting tomorrow, Nathan Graves was going to learn how to be a father. 3 weeks later, Nathan stood in the cereal aisle of a Brooklyn grocery store holding Isabella while she pointed excitedly at colorful boxes. His custom-tailored suit had been replaced by jeans and a simple button-down shirt, an attempt to blend in that wasn't entirely successful. Cookies, Isabella declared, reaching for a box of cookie-flavored cereal. How about something with actual nutrition? Nathan suggested, grabbing a box of whole grain cereal instead. Isabella's face scrunched up in the universal toddler expression of betrayal. Nathan quickly put the healthy cereal back and reached for the cookies. Okay, but we're also getting fruit. Dada soft, came a voice from the shopping cart. Nathan James, fully recovered from his bout with pneumonia, was grinning up at him with chocolate smeared around his mouth from the sample cookies Nathan had given him 5 minutes earlier. Dada. The word still made Nathan's chest tighten with an emotion he couldn't name. In 3 weeks, both children had accepted him with the easy adaptability of toddlers, but Nathan was still figuring out how to be their father. Where's Mama? He asked Nathan James, looking around the store. Potty, Nathan James replied seriously, then went back to examining the toy car Nathan had bought him at the pharmacy. Nathan had learned that grocery shopping with 18-month-old twins was an exercise in chaos management. Everything took 3 times longer. Someone was always crying or asking for something, and they went through an alarming amount of diapers and snacks. But watching Isabella carefully examine each box of cereal like she was making the most important decision of her life, Nathan found he didn't mind the chaos at all. His phone buzzed. A text from his mother. You've been avoiding me for 3 weeks. Dinner tonight or I'm showing up at your office. Nathan deleted the message without responding. He'd been deflecting Eleanor's calls and invitations, claiming work emergencies and travel. The lie sat heavily on his chest, but every time he imagined telling her about the twins, he heard Delaney's voice. I won't let that happen to my babies. Everything okay? Nathan turned to find Delaney approaching with a pharmacy bag. She'd started letting him help with errands, carefully supervised visits that felt like auditions for a role he desperately wanted to play well. Just work stuff, Nathan said, pocketing his phone. How much damage did we do? Delaney glanced at their cart, which now contained 3 boxes of cereal, a bag of apples that Isabella had insisted on picking individually, goldfish crackers, and approximately 17 impulse purchases the twins had grabbed from shelves. About standard for a trip with these two, she said, but Nathan caught the slight smile she tried to hide. Did you get milk? Nathan's face went blank. Milk? The reason we came here? Isabella finished the last of it at breakfast? Right, milk. Nathan felt his face heat up. I'll go get it. I'll get it, Delaney said. You watch them. Nathan nodded, then realized what she'd just said. She was leaving him alone with both children in a public place. 3 weeks ago, she barely trusted him to hold one of them while she was watching. This felt like progress. He was contemplating this development when Isabella started trying to climb out of the cart. Whoa there, monkey, Nathan said, lifting her back into the seat. Stay put. Down, Isabella demanded. Walk. No walking in the store. Too many people. Isabella's lower lip jutted out in a pout that was devastatingly effective. Nathan James, not to be outdone, dropped his toy car and started fussing. Want Mama? Nathan James announced. Mama's getting milk. She'll be right back. Nathan looked around frantically for something to distract them. Hey, want to see something cool? He pulled out his phone and opened the camera, switching it to video mode. Say hi to the camera. Isabella immediately perked up, waving enthusiastically. Hi. Nathan James was more skeptical, but when Isabella started making faces at the phone, he joined in, giggling. Nathan found himself recording everything. Isabella's attempt to sing what might have been the alphabet song. Nathan James showing off how he could clap his hands. Both of them laughing at something only they understood. He'd never been one to take photos or videos, but suddenly he wanted to capture every moment. That's new, Delaney said, returning with a gallon of milk. What's new? You. Documenting things. You never used to like having your picture taken. Nathan lowered the phone. I guess I never had anything worth documenting before. Something flickered across Delaney's face. Surprise, maybe, or something softer. Before Nathan could analyze it, Isabella was reaching for her mother. Mama, Dada show us his phone. Did he? That's nice. Delaney lifted Isabella out of the cart. Ready to go home? Home. Nathan had been to Delaney's apartment exactly twice, both times to drop off groceries or supplies. It was tiny, a one-bedroom where Delaney slept on the couch so the twins could have the bedroom. But it was clean and bright, with children's artwork taped to the refrigerator and toys organized in colorful bins. Actually, Nathan said as they headed toward the checkout, I was wondering if you'd let me take them to the park this afternoon. Alone, he added quickly. I know it's a big step, but Nathan, Delaney stopped walking. You've never taken them anywhere by yourself. I know, but I want to try. I've been reading. Reading what? Nathan felt his face heat up again. Parenting books and blogs. There's this website called What to Expect that's actually pretty helpful. Delaney stared at him. You've been reading parenting blogs? Is that weird? Delaney seemed to struggle for words. It's unexpected. They reached the checkout line and Nathan automatically started unloading the cart, while Delaney corralled the twins. The cashier, a teenager with purple hair, smiled at Isabella and Nathan James. Cute kids, she said. They look just like their daddy. Nathan felt a ridiculous surge of pride. Thank you. As they loaded the groceries into Nathan's BMW, he'd traded his sports car for an SUV the day after learning about the twins. Delaney was unusually quiet. About the park, Nathan said as he started the engine. I understand if you're not ready. Okay, Delaney said suddenly. Okay? You can take them to the park. For an hour. The playground on 5th Street has good fencing and only one entrance. She pulled out her phone. I'll text you my number again and you call me if anything happens, anything at all. Nathan nodded, probably too eagerly. Of course, absolutely. But as they drove through Brooklyn traffic, Nathan's hands started to sweat. Taking care of the twins with Delaney nearby was one thing. Being solely responsible for them was something else entirely. What if they got hurt? What if they ran away? What if they had meltdowns and he couldn't console them? What if he proved once and for all that he had no idea how to be a father? Nathan, Delaney said quietly, you'll be fine. They're good kids, and you're learning. What if I mess up? Then you'll fix it. That's what parents do. We mess up and figure it out as we go. She looked back at the twins who were both dozing in their car seats. Besides, they already love you. That's half the battle. Nathan pulled into the parking spot outside Delaney's building, his heart still racing with anticipation and terror. In an hour, he'd be taking his children to the park. Alone, like a real father. He just hoped he didn't prove how completely unqualified he was for the job. The playground on 5th Street was a symphony of childhood chaos. Squealing children, protective parents, and the rhythmic squeak of swing sets. Nathan sat on a bench, keeping one eye on Isabella as she navigated the toddler slide with fierce determination, while Nathan James played in the sandbox at his feet. His first solo outing as a father was going surprisingly well. No one had gotten hurt, run away, or had a public meltdown. Isabella had fallen off the monkey bars exactly once, cried for 30 seconds, then demanded to try again. Nathan James had eaten approximately half a pound of sand before Nathan realized what was happening, but according to the parenting blog he'd read that morning, this was apparently normal toddler behavior. Nathan's phone buzzed with a text from Delaney. How's it going? He snapped a photo of the twins, Isabella hanging upside down from a play structure while Nathan James buried his toy car in the sand, and sent it back with the message, "Surviving." Her response came immediately. "They look happy. You're doing great." Nathan was reading the message for the third time when a shadow fell across his bench. "Nathan? Nathan Graves?" Nathan's blood turned to ice. He looked up to see Harrison Blackwell, one of his mother's oldest friends and biggest gossip sources, staring down at him with barely concealed shock. "Harrison," Nathan managed, his mouth suddenly dry. "What are you doing in Brooklyn?" "Visiting my daughter. She lives in Park Slope." Harrison's gaze shifted to the playground, then back to Nathan. "I have to say I never expected to see you in a public playground. With children, no less." Nathan forced a smile. "Just, helping out a friend." "A friend?" Harrison's eyebrows rose as Isabella ran over, her hair messy and her dress covered in mulch. "Dada, push swing," she demanded, grabbing Nathan's hand with both of hers. The word, "Dada," hung in the air like a confession. Harrison's eyes widened and Nathan saw the exact moment when the man's surprise turned to calculating interest. "I see," Harrison said slowly. "Your children, I assume?" Nathan looked down at Isabella, who was tugging on his hand with increasing impatience, then at Nathan James, who had abandoned his sand pile to toddle over to them. Both 18-month-old children looked at him with complete trust, expecting him to fix whatever problem had arisen. "Yes," Nathan said quietly. "They're mine." "How fascinating." Harrison's voice carried the tone of someone who'd just discovered buried treasure. "I don't recall hearing about any recent additions to the Graves family." "Swing, Dada," Isabella insisted, apparently unconcerned with the adult conversation happening above her head. "In a minute, sweetheart." Nathan lifted her onto his lap, more for comfort than because she needed it. "Harrison, I'd appreciate it if you didn't what? Mention to your mother that you have children she doesn't know about?" Harrison's smile was sharp. "Nathan, surely you realize that Eleanor has a right to know about her grandchildren." "It's complicated." "I'm sure it is." Harrison glanced around the modest playground, taking in the chain-link fence and worn equipment. "Where's their mother? I'd love to meet the woman who managed to give Nathan Graves children without anyone knowing." Nathan's protective instincts flared. "She's not here. Pity. I'm sure she's interesting." The way Harrison said interesting made it sound like an insult. Nathan James, sensing tension the way children do, moved closer to Nathan's legs. Nathan reached down and scooped him up, settling both twins on his lap. "I should get them home," Nathan said, standing carefully with both children. "Good seeing you, Harrison." "Oh, I'm sure we'll be talking soon," Harrison called after him. "Give my regards to your mother when you see her." Nathan's hands shook as he buckled the twins into their car seats. Harrison Blackwell was his mother's closest ally and biggest enabler. By tonight, Eleanor would know everything, that Nathan had children, that he'd been hiding them, and that he'd been spotted in Brooklyn acting like a devoted father. "Dada sad?" Isabella asked, patting his cheek with her small hand. "No, baby. Daddy's not sad." Nathan kissed her forehead, breathing in the scent of sunshine and playground mulch that seemed to cling to children. "Daddy's just thinking." "Think later," Nathan James advised seriously. "Play now." Nathan almost smiled despite his panic. His 19-month-old son had just given him better life advice than most business consultants. The drive back to Delaney's apartment passed in a blur of traffic and racing thoughts. Nathan tried to imagine the conversation with his mother, tried to prepare for the storm that was about to break over all their heads. Delaney was waiting on the front steps of her building, her anxiety obvious even from a distance. She'd changed from the casual clothes she'd worn to the grocery store into a nicer blouse and jeans, and her hair was pulled back in the neat ponytail she wore when she was stressed. "How did it go?" she asked, as Nathan lifted the twins from their car seats. "We had fun," Nathan said, which was true. "But we need to talk." Something in his tone made Delaney's smile fade. "What happened?" "Someone saw us. Someone who knows my mother." Delaney went very still. "What did you tell them?" "The truth, that they're my children." Nathan hefted Nathan James onto his hip. "I couldn't lie about it. Not with them calling me Dada." "Oh, God." Delaney sank onto the front steps, suddenly looking exhausted. "She's going to know by tonight, isn't she?" "Probably sooner." Nathan's phone was already buzzing with missed calls. Harrison Blackwell doesn't waste time when he has gossip this good. Isabella squirmed out of Nathan's arms and climbed onto Delaney's lap, seemingly sensing her mother's distress. "Mama, okay?" "Mama's fine, baby." Delaney held Isabella close, but her eyes were fixed on Nathan. What are we going to do? I don't know. Nathan sat down beside them on the steps, still holding Nathan James. But whatever happens, I'm not letting her hurt you. Any of you. You can't control your mother, Nathan. You never could. Maybe not. But I can control myself. Nathan looked at his children, his brave, beautiful children who had no idea their world was about to be turned upside down. I meant what I said in the hospital. I'm not going anywhere. Delaney studied his face for a long moment. Even if she makes you choose? Between us and your family's approval? I already chose, Nathan said quietly. I chose wrong the first time. I won't make that mistake again. Nathan's phone rang. His mother's number lit up the screen like a warning. Answer it, Delaney said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. Better to get it over with. Nathan looked at his family. Because that's what they were, he realized, sitting on these Brooklyn steps with children on their laps and worry in their hearts. They were his family, and he was going to fight for them. He answered the phone. Hello, Mother. Nathan James Graves. Eleanor's voice was ice cold with fury. You have exactly 1 hour to get to my house, and bring them with you. The Graves family estate sat on 5 manicured acres in the Hamptons, its imposing Georgian facade designed to intimidate. Nathan had grown up in this house, but as he carried Nathan James up the marble front steps while Delaney held Isabella's hand, it felt like approaching a fortress. Are you sure about this? Delaney whispered, her voice tight with anxiety. She'd changed into her best dress, a simple navy blue number that Nathan recognized from their college days, and pulled her hair back severely. Armor for battle. No, Nathan admitted, but hiding isn't an option anymore. The front door opened before they could knock. Eleanor Graves stood in the doorway, and Nathan felt Delaney's sharp intake of breath beside him. His mother was 63 but looked 50, her silver hair perfectly styled, and her Chanel suit immaculate despite the late hour. She'd always been intimidating, but now her pale blue eyes, so like Nathan's own, burned with barely controlled fury. Nathan. Her gaze flicked to Delaney, then to the children, cataloging every detail with surgical precision. Ms. Ross. How unexpected. Hello, Mrs. Graves, Delaney said quietly, her chin raised despite the obvious tension in her body. Eleanor's eyes lingered on Nathan James, who was studying her with the fearless curiosity of a toddler. He looks like you did at that age, she said to Nathan, and there was something almost vulnerable in her voice before the ice returned. Come in. We have much to discuss. The foyer was a monument to old money. Crystal chandelier, Persian rugs, oil portraits of long-dead Graves ancestors. Isabella pressed closer to Delaney's leg, overwhelmed by the grandeur, while Nathan James reached for a marble sculpture that probably cost more than most people's cars. Perhaps the children would be more comfortable in the sunroom, Eleanor suggested, her tone making it clear this wasn't really a suggestion. Maria can watch them while we talk. No, Nathan's voice was firm. They stay with us. Eleanor's eyebrows rose at being contradicted, but she led them into the formal living room instead. The space was all cream silk and antiques, distinctly unwelcoming to anyone under the age of 30, or anyone who couldn't afford to replace a sofa if they spilled something on it. Sit, Eleanor commanded, settling into her favorite chair like a queen holding court. Nathan remained standing, keeping Nathan James in his arms while Delaney perched nervously on the edge of a sofa with Isabella. The battle lines were drawn. Eleanor in her chair of power, Nathan's family clustered together on the opposite side of the room. 2 years, Eleanor began, her voice deceptively calm. For 2 years you've let me believe you were simply going through a difficult phase after your relationship ended. Meanwhile, you've been playing house in Brooklyn with illegitimate children. They're not illegitimate, Nathan said sharply. They're my children. Children you've hidden from your family. Children born to a woman who, Eleanor's gaze cut to Delaney, left you rather suddenly, didn't she? Right around the time you were considering proposing. Delaney's face went pale, but her voice was steady. I left because you made it clear I wasn't welcome in your son's life. And yet here you are with 2 very convenient reasons for Nathan to reconsider. Eleanor's smile was sharp as a blade. How perfectly timed. That's enough. Nathan stepped forward, his voice carrying the authority he used in boardrooms. You will not speak to the mother of my children that way. The mother of your children, Eleanor repeated. How quickly you've embraced that role. Tell me, Nathan, have you considered the implications? The media attention when this comes out? The impact on the company stock? The questions about your judgment? Nathan felt something cold settle in his stomach. His mother's weapons had always been logic and consequence, wielded with surgical precision. Or perhaps, Eleanor continued, we could handle this more discreetly. Private schools for the children, of course. A trust fund managed by the family lawyers. A lovely home in Westchester where Ms. Ross could raise them properly with appropriate supervision. Supervision? Delaney's voice was barely above a whisper. Well, naturally. These children carry the Graves name now. They'll need proper guidance if they're to take their place in society. Eleanor's tone was reasonable, almost kind. Weekly visits with Nathan, of course. Holidays when convenient. A very generous settlement to ensure everyone's comfort. Nathan saw exactly what his mother was offering. A gilded cage. His children raised by nannies and tutors. Molded into perfect little heirs. Delaney relegated to the role of weekend visitor in her own children's lives. No, Nathan said simply. Eleanor blinked, clearly not expecting such flat refusal. I beg your pardon? I said no to all of it. Nathan moved closer to Delaney. Nathan James still secure in his arms. These are my children and this is their mother. We're a family. Nathan, be realistic. You know nothing about raising children. You work 18-hour days. You've never even changed a diaper. I've changed plenty of diapers in the last 3 weeks, Nathan interrupted. I've learned to make bottles and read bedtime stories and push swings. I've discovered that Nathan James likes strawberries but hates bananas, and that Isabella can sing the entire alphabet song but only if you don't look directly at her while she's doing it. Something flickered across Eleanor's face. Surprise, maybe even hurt. 3 weeks? You've known about them for 3 weeks and said nothing? Because I knew this would happen. Nathan gestured around the formal room. I knew you'd try to take control, try to manage the situation like a business deal. I'm trying to protect this family's reputation. I'm trying to protect my family, Nathan shot back. My real family. The words hung in the air like a slap. Eleanor's composure cracked for just a moment, and Nathan saw the woman beneath the perfectly controlled exterior. His mother, who'd lost her husband too young and spent years protecting the empire he'd left behind. Nathan, she said quietly, you're making a mistake. These people, they're not like us. You're right, Delaney said suddenly, standing up with Isabella in her arms. We're not like you. We don't think love comes with conditions or that children are possessions to be managed. She looked directly at Eleanor, her fear replaced by fierce maternal protectiveness. And we don't make people choose between family and acceptance. Eleanor's mask slipped back into place. How noble. And when Nathan realizes that love doesn't pay private school tuition or provide security, when he discovers that playing daddy is more complicated than boardroom negotiations, then we'll figure it out, Nathan said. Together. Together? Eleanor stood, her full height and authority on display. Nathan, you're a billionaire. You have responsibilities, obligations. You can't just abandon everything for a fantasy of domestic bliss. I'm not abandoning anything. I'm choosing what matters most. Eleanor stared at him for a long moment, and Nathan saw the exact instant when disappointed love hardened into something colder. Very well, she said crisply. But understand this, Nathan. If you choose this path, you choose it completely. No coming to me when reality sets in. No expectation that the family will bail you out when this experiment fails. I understand. Eleanor's gaze shifted to the twins, both of whom had been remarkably well behaved during the adult drama. Nathan James was playing with Nathan's tie, while Isabella had fallen asleep against Delaney's shoulder. They're beautiful children, Eleanor said quietly, and for a moment Nathan heard genuine regret in her voice. They deserve better than uncertainty. They deserve parents who love them, Nathan replied. That's what they're getting. Eleanor nodded once, a sharp, final gesture. Maria will show you out. As they walked toward the front door, Nathan felt the weight of burned bridges and severed ties. He'd just chosen love over legacy, his children over his inheritance. The magnitude of that decision was only beginning to sink in. But as they reached the car and he watched Delaney carefully buckle Isabella into her car seat, while Nathan James babbled happily about the big house, Nathan knew he'd made the right choice. The only choice that mattered. Are you okay? Delaney asked softly as they drove away from the estate. Nathan looked in the rearview mirror at his sleeping children, then at the woman beside him, the mother of his children, the love he'd lost and found again. Yeah, he said, and meant it. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. 2 days after the confrontation with Eleanor, Nathan's world began to crumble in ways he hadn't anticipated. It started with a phone call at 6 a.m. Nathan was in Delaney's tiny kitchen, attempting to make pancakes while Isabella supervised from her high chair, and Nathan James played with blocks on the floor. The domestic scene felt surreal. Nathan Graves, who used to eat breakfast meetings at five-star restaurants, now wore a flour-dusted apron and had syrup in his hair. "Nathan Graves," he answered, balancing the phone against his shoulder while flipping a pancake that looked more like abstract art. "Nathan, it's Richard." His lawyer's voice was grim. "We need to talk immediately." Nathan glanced at Delaney, who was getting ready for work in the bathroom. "Can it wait? Your mother has filed for emergency custody of the twins." The spatula slipped from Nathan's hand, clattering to the floor. "What?" "She's claiming you're an unfit parent, alleging that the children are being raised in unsafe conditions, that their mother has a history of instability." Richard's voice was carefully neutral. "Nathan, she has photos." "Photos of what?" "You're building the neighborhood. She's arguing that you're endangering the children by allowing them to live in a high-crime area." Nathan felt the walls of the small kitchen closing in around him. "That's ridiculous. This neighborhood is—" "There was a break-in 3 blocks away last week. A mugging 2 days ago." Richard's tone was apologetic but firm. "Nathan, she's built a compelling case. She has character witnesses, financial experts, child psychologists. This isn't a bluff." Isabella threw a piece of pancake on the floor, laughing delightedly. The sound, normally music to Nathan's ears, now felt like mockery. "What about Delaney? She's their mother. Your mother's lawyers are arguing that Ms. Ross deliberately concealed the children's existence to extort money from you. They're painting her as an opportunist who's using the 18-month-old children as leverage." Nathan closed his eyes, feeling his mother's strategy unfold with devastating clarity. Eleanor hadn't accepted his choice. She'd simply regrouped and attacked from a different angle. "How long do we have?" "The hearing is Thursday. 3 days." "Thursday." Nathan looked at his children, innocent and happy in their familiar kitchen, unaware that their entire world was about to be dissected by lawyers and judges. "Nathan?" Delaney emerged from the bathroom, her work uniform crisp and her hair pulled back. "Who was that?" Nathan ended the call and turned to face her. "How did you tell the woman you loved that your mother was trying to steal her children?" "We need to talk," he said quietly. 20 minutes later, they sat on Delaney's small couch while the twins napped, and Nathan watched Delaney's world shatter. "She can't do that," Delaney whispered, her face pale. "They're my babies. I'm their mother. She's claiming that I'm their father and have equal rights and that you've been unstable." "Unstable?" Delaney's voice cracked. "Because I'm poor? Because I don't live in a mansion?" Nathan reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "Delaney, we're going to fight this. Richard says—" "Richard works for your family," Delaney said flatly. "How do I know he's really on our side?" The question hit Nathan like a physical blow because he couldn't answer it with complete certainty. Richard had been the Graves family lawyer for 15 years. "Then we'll get our own lawyer," Nathan said. "The best family attorney in the city." "With what money?" Delaney laughed bitterly. "Nathan, I make $12 an hour at Little Steps Daycare Center. Your mother probably spends more on handbags than I make in a year. I have money. Do you?" Delaney stood up, pacing the small living room. "Because I'm betting your mother controls your trust fund, your inheritance. Probably your company stock too." Nathan felt cold dread settling in his stomach. "She wouldn't. She just tried to take my children. What do you think she wouldn't do?" As if summoned by their conversation, Nathan's phone rang. His accountant. "Mr. Graves, I'm calling about your accounts. There seems to be some kind of freeze." Nathan hung up and immediately called his bank, then his investment firm, then his company's financial department. The picture that emerged was devastating in its thoroughness. Eleanor had moved fast and efficiently. His personal accounts were frozen pending investigation of irregular activity. His company credit cards had been suspended. His trust fund was under review by the Board of Trustees, a board his mother chaired. "How much cash do you have?" Delaney asked when Nathan finished the last call. Nathan checked his wallet. "About $300. I have 67. Delaney sat down heavily. "So we're fighting one of the most powerful families in New York with less than $400 and 3 days' notice." They sat in silence, the magnitude of their situation sinking in. From the bedroom came the sound of Nathan James waking up from his nap, calling for his mama. "I should go get him," Delaney said, but she didn't move. "Del." Nathan hadn't used her nickname in years, but it slipped out naturally. "We're going to figure this out." "Are we? Because it feels like your mother thought of everything." Delaney's voice was hollow. "She's going to paint me as a gold digger who hid your children to manipulate you. and you as an irresponsible playboy who's having a midlife crisis. I don't care what she paints me as. You should care. Delaney turned to face him, tears streaming down her cheeks. Because if we lose, if she gets custody, do you think she'll let you see them? Do you think she'll let me see them? The thought of his children being raised by nannies in his mother's cold mansion, of Delaney being cut out of their lives entirely, made Nathan feel sick. There has to be something, he said desperately. Some way to fight this. With what weapons? She has unlimited money, unlimited resources, unlimited connections. Delaney wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. All we have is love, and apparently that's not enough. Nathan James's cries grew louder, and Isabella joined in from the next room. Delaney stood to go to them, but Nathan caught her hand. Don't give up, he said. Please. There has to be a way. Delaney looked down at him, and Nathan saw the moment when she made a decision that terrified him. Maybe there is, she said quietly. Maybe I should disappear. Take them somewhere your mother can't find us. Del, no. Running won't solve anything. Won't it? She can't get custody of children she can't locate. Delaney's voice was gaining strength, the strength of a mother protecting her young. I have some savings, enough to get us to another state, maybe another country. You'd be fugitives. They'd find you eventually, and then at least I'll have had more time with my babies than your mother will give me if she wins. Nathan stood up, desperate to make her understand. If you run, you'll lose them forever. The courts will see it as proof that you're unstable. They'll never let you near them again. And if I stay, I might lose them anyway. The twins' cries were getting more insistent. Delaney pulled her hand free and headed toward the bedroom, leaving Nathan alone with the devastating realization that his mother had orchestrated this perfectly. Eleanor had given them an impossible choice: fight a battle they couldn't win, or run and lose everything anyway. But as Nathan listened to Delaney's gentle voice soothing their children in the next room, he realized there might be a third option, one that would cost him everything, but might save the people who mattered most. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number he hadn't called in 2 years. Hello, Mother, he said when Eleanor answered. We need to talk. Nathan met his mother at the Graves Industries boardroom at midnight, the skyscraper empty except for security and the ghosts of his family's legacy. Eleanor sat at the head of the mahogany conference table, perfectly composed despite the late hour, her hands folded as if she were conducting any other business meeting. You look terrible, she observed, as Nathan took the seat across from her. Nathan knew he did. He hadn't slept in 36 hours, hadn't shaved, and was wearing the same clothes from yesterday. But he'd spent those sleepless hours planning, calculating, preparing for the most important negotiation of his life. Let's skip the pleasantries, Nathan said. What do you want? Eleanor smiled, the expression sharp as winter light. I want what's best for this family, what's best for those children. Cut the Maternal Concern Act. We both know this isn't about their welfare. Nathan leaned forward. This is about control, about me defying you and making you look weak, perhaps. But the result is the same. Those children deserve better than uncertainty. They deserve to be with their mother who waited 2 years to tell you they existed, their mother who's raising them in a neighborhood where gunshots are background noise. Eleanor's voice remained calm, clinical. Nathan, be realistic. What kind of life can you give them living in that apartment? Nathan had been asking himself the same question for days. The brutal truth was that his mother was partially right. His children deserved stability, security, opportunities. But they also deserved love, and that was something all of Eleanor's money couldn't guarantee. What's your offer? Nathan asked. Eleanor pulled out a leather portfolio, sliding it across the table. Full custody to me as their legal guardian. Delaney receives a settlement of $5 million in exchange for relinquishing all parental rights. You receive supervised visitation rights, and the children are raised as Graves heirs. Nathan didn't open the folder. And if I refuse? Then we go to court Thursday and I destroy Delaney's reputation so thoroughly that she'll be lucky to get weekend visitation. Eleanor's mask of civility slipped slightly. I have private investigators' reports going back 2 years, Nathan. Every job she's lost, every late rent payment, every questionable decision. Did you know she was hospitalized for exhaustion when the twins were 6 months old? That she had to apply for food assistance? Nathan's hands clenched into fists. She was struggling because I wasn't there to help. Exactly. And the court will see a pattern of instability and poor judgment. Eleanor leaned back in her chair. I'm offering her a way out with dignity and financial security. It's more generous than she deserves. She'll never take it. Then she'll lose everything. And those children will grow up knowing their mother chose poverty and pride over their welfare. Nathan stood and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. Somewhere out there, Delaney was probably awake, holding their children and wondering if she'd ever see them again. The thought made his chest ache. "There's a third option," Nathan said without turning around. "Oh? I give up everything. My inheritance, my position in the company, my trust fund, all of it." Nathan faced his mother. "In exchange, you drop the custody suit and leave my family alone." Eleanor's composure cracked for the first time. "Nathan, don't be ridiculous. I'm completely serious. You want to punish me for choosing them over you? Fine. But punishment is between us. Leave Delaney and the children out of it. You can't be serious. You'd give up everything your father built, everything you've worked for? For my children in a heartbeat." Nathan returned to his seat. "Here's my offer. I sign over all my shares in Graves Industries to you. I renounce any claim to my inheritance. I walk away from this life completely. And in return, you drop the custody suit and never contact my family again." Eleanor stared at him as if he'd lost his mind. "Nathan, you're talking about throwing away billions of dollars. Your entire future. I'm talking about choosing my actual future over the one you planned for me." Nathan's voice was steady, certain. "I love them, Mother. I love Delaney. And I love our children more than money or power or family approval. Love doesn't pay for college tuition or medical bills. I'll figure it out. I have a Harvard MBA and 15 years of business experience. I can start over." Eleanor was quiet for a long moment, studying her son with something that might have been respect. "You really mean this? I've never meant anything more in my life. And Delaney? Does she know you're here?" Nathan shook his head. "She thinks I'm home working on our legal defense. She didn't ask you to do this. She doesn't know I'm doing it." Nathan met his mother's gaze. "This is my choice. My decision." Eleanor stood and walked to the window where Nathan had been standing, her reflection ghost-like in the glass. "Your father would be—" She paused, searching for words. "I'm not sure if he'd be proud or heartbroken." "Dad loved you enough to marry you despite his family's objections," Nathan said quietly. "I think he'd understand." Eleanor was quiet for so long that Nathan wondered if she'd heard him. When she finally spoke, her voice was smaller than he'd ever heard it. "I raised you to be strong, to value family legacy above personal desires. I thought I was protecting you from the kind of pain I felt when your father died. You were protecting the company. There's a difference." "Perhaps." Eleanor turned from the window. "You really believe she loves you? Not what you can provide, but you?" Nathan thought about Delaney's face when she'd seen him in the hospital corridor, the relief and terror mixed together. He thought about the way she'd defended their children from Eleanor's manipulation, the fierce protectiveness that had nothing to do with money. "I know she does." Eleanor nodded slowly. "Very well. I'll have the papers drawn up." Nathan felt something inside his chest loosen for the first time in days. "And the custody suit? Will be dropped tomorrow morning." Eleanor returned to her seat, suddenly looking older than her 63 years. "But Nathan, understand this. There's no coming back. Once you sign those papers, you're no longer my heir. You're not a Graves. I'll always be your son," Nathan said gently. "But I need to be their father first." Eleanor's smile was sad but genuine. "He would be proud," she said finally. "Your father. He'd be proud that you chose love." Nathan stood to leave, then paused at the door. "The children, if you ever want to meet them properly, as their grandmother, instead of their adversary, perhaps someday," Eleanor said softly, "when the wounds aren't so fresh." Nathan nodded and walked out of Graves Industries for the last time as its heir. It was almost dawn when he returned to Delaney's apartment. She was awake, sitting at the kitchen table with legal documents spread around her and tears on her cheeks. "I've been thinking about running," she said without looking up. "Taking the kids and disappearing. It's probably our only chance." Nathan sat down beside her and gently closed the laptop she'd been using to research custody law. "We're not running," he said, "and we're not losing them." Delaney finally looked at him, hope and desperation warring in her green eyes. "Nathan, we can't win this fight. You know we can't. We already have." Nathan pulled out his phone and showed her the email that had arrived 20 minutes ago. "The custody suit has been dropped. It's over." Delaney stared at the screen, then at Nathan. "How? What did you do?" Nathan took her hands in his, feeling the calluses from years of hard work, the strength that had raised their children alone. "I chose us," he said simply. "I chose our family." As the sun rose over Brooklyn, painting Delaney's small kitchen in golden light. Nathan told her about his midnight negotiation. He watched her face as he explained what he'd given up, what he'd gained, what their future would look like. When he finished, Delaney was crying again. But this time they were tears of relief, of gratitude, of love. "You gave up everything," she whispered. "No," Nathan said, pulling her into his arms as their children began stirring in the next room. "I finally found everything." 3 years later, Nathan Graves, now Nathan Ross Graves after legally hyphenating his name to match his wife's, stood in the kitchen of their modest 2-bedroom house in Queens, attempting to braid Isabella's hair while she ate cereal, and Nathan James practiced tying his shoes at the kitchen table. "Daddy, you're pulling too tight," Isabella complained, reaching up to touch the lopsided braid Nathan had managed to create. "Sorry, princess. Daddy's still learning." Nathan kissed the top of her head, marveling at how much she'd grown. At 4.5, Isabella was all legs and opinions, with her father's stubborn streak and her mother's fierce independence. "I did it," Nathan James announced, holding up his foot to display a remarkably crooked bow. "Look, Daddy, that's perfect, buddy," Nathan said, ruffling his son's dark hair. Nathan James had inherited his father's determination but his mother's gentle heart, and at 4 years old, he approached every challenge with unwavering optimism. "Where's Mama?" Isabella asked, sliding off her chair to examine her reflection in the refrigerator door. "She's getting ready for her interview," Nathan said, glancing toward their bedroom. Today, Delaney was interviewing for a position as head teacher at Riverside Academy, a prestigious private preschool that would use her education degree and provide the kind of stability they'd built their new life around. Nathan had kept his promise to start over. He'd used his business experience to launch a consulting firm that helped small businesses develop sustainable growth strategies. It had taken 2 years to build a steady client base, and they'd lived on savings and Delaney's daycare salary during the lean months. But now his company was thriving. They weren't rich, not by Graves' family standards, but they were comfortable, secure, and most importantly, happy. "Do I look okay?" Delaney emerged from the bedroom wearing a navy dress and the pearl earrings Nathan had given her for their first wedding anniversary. She'd cut her hair to shoulder length, and motherhood had given her a confidence that made her even more beautiful than the college girl he'd fallen in love with 8 years ago. "You look perfect," Nathan said, meaning it. "They'd be crazy not to hire you. The references from your current job are glowing," Nathan added, straightening her collar with gentle hands. "And you're the best teacher those kids could ask for." Delaney had finished her education degree through night classes and online courses, studying after the twins went to bed while Nathan handled bedtime stories and midnight feedings. She'd left Little Steps Daycare Center 2 years ago, when Nathan's consulting business became profitable enough to support them, allowing her to focus on completing her degree. Watching her pursue her dreams while raising their children had been one of the most inspiring things Nathan had ever witnessed. "Mama pretty," Nathan James declared, abandoning his shoes to hug Delaney's legs. "Thank you, baby." Delaney lifted him up, careful not to wrinkle her dress. "Are you going to be good for Mrs. Chen today?" Their elderly neighbor had become an unofficial grandmother to the twins, babysitting when needed, and teaching them Mandarin phrases that they pronounced with adorable earnestness. "We're always good," Isabella said with 4.5-year-old indignation. Nathan and Delaney exchanged amused looks. Yesterday, always good, Isabella had convinced her brother to help her build a fort out of every piece of furniture in the living room, resulting in an avalanche of couch cushions and a very disgruntled cat. "I should go," Delaney said, checking her watch. "The interview's at 10. "You've got this," Nathan said, kissing her softly. Even after 3 years of marriage, the simple contact still sent electricity through both of them. As Delaney gathered her purse and portfolio, Nathan caught her hand. "Del, I'm proud of you." She smiled, the expression lighting up her entire face. "I'm proud of us." After Delaney left and the twins were safely delivered to Mrs. Chen's apartment, Nathan walked to work through their tree-lined neighborhood. It was a far cry from the Manhattan penthouse he'd once called home, but he'd never been happier. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Congratulations on your anniversary. The children look beautiful. E." Nathan stopped walking, staring at the message. He'd had no contact with Eleanor since the night he'd signed away his inheritance, though he knew she kept tabs on them through private investigators. The twins were growing up in newspaper photo archives and social media posts she probably monitored religiously. Attached to the message was a photo: Nathan, Delaney, and the twins at Isabella's preschool graduation last month. They were all laughing at something Nathan James had said, their faces bright with joy and love. Nathan typed back, "Thank you. They miss having a grandmother." The response came immediately. "Perhaps it's time we change that. Would next Sunday work for tea?" Nathan stared at the message for a long time. 3 years ago, he would have been suspicious, looking for the angle, the manipulation. But the photo Eleanor had sent told a different story. It captured a moment of pure happiness, and maybe, just maybe, even Eleanor Graves could recognize that what her son had chosen was worth more than money. He typed back, "I'll ask Delaney. Tell her I make excellent cookies. Children love cookies." Despite everything, Nathan smiled. His mother offering to bake cookies for grandchildren she'd tried to take away. Maybe redemption was possible after all. That evening, Nathan came home to find Delaney in the kitchen, still wearing her interview clothes but with an apron tied over her dress. The twins were helping her make dinner, which meant Isabella was standing on a chair stirring something while Nathan James arranged vegetables in elaborate patterns on the cutting board. "How did it go?" Nathan asked, kissing Delaney's cheek. "I got it," she said, trying to contain her smile. "I got the job." "Mama got a job," Isabella announced, waving her wooden spoon like a victory flag. Nathan picked up both children, spinning them around while they shrieked with laughter. "That's amazing! We need to celebrate. Ice cream," Nathan James suggested. "Ice cream for dinner?" Delaney pretended to consider this seriously. "That seems like excellent celebration food." As they piled into Nathan's practical sedan, he'd traded the BMW for a more family-friendly option. Nathan thought about the text from his mother, the offer of reconciliation, of a chance for the twins to know their grandmother. "Del," he said as they drove toward the ice cream shop, "my mother contacted me today." Delaney's hands stilled in her lap. "Oh? She wants to meet them. Properly this time." Nathan glanced in the rearview mirror at the twins who were singing an elaborate song about ice cream flavors. "I told her I'd ask you." Delaney was quiet for a long moment. "What do you think?" "I think maybe people can change. Maybe she's realized what she almost lost." Nathan reached over to take Delaney's hand. "But it's your call. They're your children too." "Our children," Delaney corrected gently. "And maybe they deserve a chance to know all their family." Nathan squeezed her hand. Love for this incredible woman washing over him like a tide. She was willing to forgive his mother, to give Eleanor a chance despite everything that had happened, because she believed children deserved grandparents. "Are you sure?" "No," Delaney admitted. "But I'm sure that 3 years ago, I never would have imagined being this happy. Maybe impossible things happen more often than we think." That night, after ice cream and bedtime stories and the familiar chaos of getting 2 4-year-olds ready for bed, Nathan and Delaney sat on their small back porch, sharing a bottle of wine, and watching fireflies dance in their postage-stamp garden. "Do you ever regret it?" Delaney asked quietly. "Giving up everything for this?" Nathan looked through the window at their tiny house, cluttered with toys and finger paintings, and the beautiful mess of family life. He thought about the penthouse gathering dust, the trust fund he'd never touch, the business empire he'd walked away from. "Never," he said, pulling Delaney closer. "Not for a single second. Even when the twins flood the bathroom trying to give their stuffed animals a bath? Especially then." Nathan kissed her temple, breathing in the scent of her shampoo and the lingering sweetness of ice cream. "This is real, Del. This is what matters." As if summoned by their conversation, Nathan James appeared in the doorway, clutching his stuffed dinosaur and rubbing his eyes. "Bad dream," he announced matter-of-factly. "Come here, buddy," Nathan said, lifting his son onto his lap. "Want to tell us about it?" "There was a monster," Nathan James said seriously. "But then I remembered what you said about monsters." "What did I say?" "That love is stronger than monsters, and we have lots of love." Nathan felt his chest tighten with emotion. "That's right. We have so much love that no monster could ever win." Nathan James nodded sleepily, already drifting off against his father's chest. Delaney rested her head on Nathan's shoulder, and they sat there in comfortable silence, a family of 4 on a porch in Queens, surrounded by the kind of wealth that couldn't be measured in dollars. 3 years ago, Nathan had been a billionaire running through Central Park, trying to outpace his anger and emptiness. Tonight he was exactly where he belonged, holding his son while his wife dozed against his shoulder, fireflies dancing in their garden, and somewhere inside their modest home, their daughter slept peacefully in a bed surrounded by books and dreams. He'd given up everything to find this life, and it had been the best trade he'd ever made. Sometimes love really was stronger than monsters. Sometimes choosing family over fortune led to the kind of riches that mattered most. And sometimes a man running away from his problems could end up running straight into his destiny. Would you have made the same choice Nathan did, trading billions for the chance at true love and family? Your participation means a lot to the channel. Please share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below letting us know what you thought. Your feedback and support mean a lot to us. Stay tuned for more exciting stories.